October 2nd, 2017. I want to start this out with an article on CNN Money, August 31st, 2015, that talks about Donald Trump, his 4 business bankruptcies. There's a video on this link, that'll be the first link below, and it talks about how here's his quote: "I have used the laws of this country, the bankruptcy, in parentheses, chapter laws, to do a great job for my company, myself, for my employees, and my family," he said during the first Republican presidential debate on August 6th. He claims that successful businesses file for bankruptcy all the time. And the debate, he said, virtually every person that you read about on the front page of the business sections, they've used the, in parentheses, bankruptcy law. It's worth looking at and listening to because there's a big debate about helping Puerto Rico right now because they're in so much debt. Puerto Rico has been in debt for a long time. And this article, it says, poverty in Puerto Rico is caused by a variety of problems, which I will get to in a few minutes. This was written, where's the date on here? March 2017. This was before the hurricane that just hit there. I'm going to go back down. There's a little video on here. And then here it talks about this law, the PROMESA law that President Obama signed to supposedly provide stability, better services, and prosperity for the people of Puerto Rico. Now, this law reduces the minimum wage to $4.25 for people 24 and under. This is United States people here in Puerto Rico. Okay, and then there's a whole lot of things that the law does. So the link for this will be below. Here on Wikipedia, and they have plenty of, I'm going to go way down to the bottom for a minute. Here's all the information, lets you know where you can find all the information that they're using on this site. So I'm going to go back up, sorry, fast. PROMESA, or however you pronounce it, was enacted by the United States Congress that establishes an oversight board, a process of restructuring debt and expedited procedures for approving critical infrastructure projects in order to combat the Puerto Rican government debt crisis. With this protection, the then governor of Puerto Rico, and I can't pronounce his name right here, Alejandro Garcia Padilla, and I apologize for pronouncing that really bad, suspended payments due on July 1st, 2016. And if you go down here farther, it talks a lot about things that happened in Puerto Rico, like in many other areas of the world. After 400 years of Spanish rule, Puerto Rico was handed over as a war prize to the U.S. after the negotiations that led, I'm going to move it up, to the drafting of the Treaty of Paris in 1898. As U.S. investors began to settle on the land, serious vulnerabilities in the social and economic structures of Puerto Rico agricultural economy began to arise, the repercussions of which would be evident in the years to come. And then this really bad hurricane, ZcCEgHxgrqY or something, of 1899 killed over 3,400 Puerto Ricans and destroyed many important export crops, especially coffee. Shortly thereafter, while neglecting to provide any meaningful form of hurricane disaster relief, the U.S. set up the American Colonial Bank and converted the Puerto Rican peso to the American dollar and devalued the currency by 40%. The Four-Acre Act of 1900 made Puerto Rico subject to U.S. federal law by establishing a civil government appointed by the U.S. President. This act prohibited Puerto Rico from negotiating trade treaties with any foreign country or settling its own tariffs or import-export regulations. In 1917, the Jones Act imposed a civil administration with a new import and export taxes and regulations. I'm going to move it up again. Key to this legislation was the implementation of triple tax exempt municipal bonds. This means that the interest on municipal bonds are not subject to federal, local, or state taxes, causing the economically desperate government of Puerto Rico to flock to buy bonds in order to finance public services. The Jones Act also granted U.S. citizenship onto all Puerto Ricans, but disallowed Puerto Ricans living in the island the ability to vote in U.S. presidential or congressional elections. This institutionally implemented structural dependency is reinforced in 1952 when the Puerto Rican government constructs its own constitution, officially deeming the island the Estado Libre Asociado de Puerto Rico, literally Associated Free State of Puerto Rico, also known as the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. Unlike the Free State name may seem to suggest, this did not give Puerto Rico any significant political and social economic autonomy that stands apart from the U.S. powers that control the territory. Up some more. In fact, the Constitution openly supports this unspoken, exploitative economic code containing language that limits fiscal misbehavior by suggesting that the island's public debt must be prioritized before spending for basic public services occurs. And this goes on to talk about how the debt happened and how awful it has been for these people in Puerto Rico. And I would suggest reading it. I only have so much time on this video, so I'm not going to read it all. You can stop this and read it yourself. I'll go down here. According to Nielsen Dennis, in response to the social economic situation, many native Puerto Ricans continued to leave the island in hopes of a better future. Immigration rates were estimated to be at about 50,000 a year. Act 20 and Act 22 were passed in 2012 to repeal obligations on personal income tax to new Puerto Rican residents, those non-natives who choose to move to Puerto Rico from the U.S., and to repeal obligations for capital investors, mainly that of industrial or manufacturing sectors, to pay capital gains taxes. This made Puerto Rico a tax haven for U.S. mainland citizens who are looking to invest in the manufacturing industry but continues to ignore the problem of structural dependency and economic stagnation that has led to such a large amount of unpayable debt. Okay, so then here's the overview of what Promesa does. It enables the island's government to enter a bankruptcy-like restructuring process and halt litigation in case of default. So it goes on down here to talk about what it will do. And this is very interesting for all the arguments that you're going to hear about the debt and why we shouldn't help them. This is also interesting to me. Recently elected Governor Ricardo Rossello hired investment expert Rothschild and Company in January 2017 to assist in convincing creditors to take deeper losses than they had expected. Okay, so in 2016, Obama appointed 7 members of the board. So this is somebody appointing members of the board that the Puerto Ricans themselves could not vote for or decide. on at all. And here is the criticism of it. Critics indicate that the law continues to treat the island as an anomaly, neither as a state nor a municipality, fails to provide a way for statehood or independence, and does not deal with underlying economic problems such as high unemployment, lack of opportunities, welfare issues, and brain drain. The Oversight Board will have broad sovereign powers to effectively overrule decisions by Puerto Rico's legislature, governor, and other public authorities under federal government's constitutional power to make all needful rules and regulations regarding U.S. territories. For this reason, the board has been criticized as colonial and anti-democratic in nature. And then there's more and more and more, along with all the references. Now, here's another article from Wikipedia about some of the original people that were living in Puerto Rico, the Taino. And this is a very interesting article also. At the time of Columbus' arrival in 1492, there were 5 Taino chiefdoms and territories on Hispaniola. I'm sure that wasn't the original name. But we're going to move down here a little. So down here just a little bit farther, it says, by 1548, the Taino population had declined to fewer than 500. My cat is meowing. I think this sounds interesting. The Taino had a matrilineal system of kinship, descent, and inheritance. So they're talking about women running the show, kind of. The Taino women were highly skilled in agriculture. The people depended on it, but the men also fished and hunted. They made fishing nets and ropes from cotton and palm. And then they talk about what they look like. Often the general population lived in large circular buildings constructed with wooden poles. It sounds beautiful. It's a beautiful island. It would be fabulous to live there like that. So now I'm down just a little bit farther. Columbus and his crew landing on the island in the Bahamas were the first Europeans to encounter the Taino people. And he wrote, they traded with us and gave us everything they had with goodwill. Okay, so then, on his second voyage, Columbus began to require tribute from the Taino in Hispaniola. According to Kirkpatrick Sale, each adult over 14 years of age was expected to deliver a hawk's bell full of gold every 3 months, or when this was lacking, 25 pounds of spun cotton. If this tribute was not brought, the Spanish cut off the hands of the Taino and left them to bleed to death. These cruel practices inspired many revolts by the Taino and campaigns against the Spanish, some being successful and some not. And that, to me, is the beginning of all this other baloney. So right here is the link for FEMA federal aid programs for the Commonwealth of Puerto Rico. This is interesting. Rental payments for temporary housing for those whose homes are unlivable. Grants for home repairs, etc., etc., etc. And it tells you at lower down how to apply. Here's the number. And also included is this. Loans up to $2 million for small businesses, etc., etc. Loans up to $500,000 for farmers. A loan is not the same as a grant. A loan is you have to pay it back with interest. Here is a video and an article from CNN Money where the mayor of Puerto Rico, San Juan, I'm sorry, I beg your pardon, is asking, don't put debt above people. So I just want to show you this Modern Slavery Act of 2015 for the UK. Offenses: slavery, servitude, and forced compulsory labor. This sounds a lot like what they're doing to Puerto Rico. A person holds another person in slavery or servitude, and the circumstances are such that the person knows or ought